The Clippers staved off going down 3-1. I don't even know where to start, Russillo, but that game was awesome.
If you're a Mavs fan, would you rather just been blown out?
You know, heading into the fourth quarter, I was thinking, who is this going to be a worse loss for? And I think the answer would have been the Clippers, right? Because you would have made playoff history. But for the Mavs to claw all the way back and then still lose, really rough. Yeah, I think you probably would have rather just lost by 20.
Look, I'll admit, I mean, when you watch the first quarter, you're going, oh my God, Clippers are on fire here. Like they can't possibly keep this up. And then went to another level. So you're looking at it going, okay, so the Mavs haven't made a three. Luka has 2 fouls. It's 39-16. Clippers are 8 of 11 from 3. You're like, okay, well, this is just crazy. But it wasn't.
It was 55-26.
Yeah, it got worse. So as I'm watching the first quarter, I'm like, all right, weird first quarter. A lot of work to do, boys. And then it gets even worse. Kyrie saved Dallas 2 separate times. That big run in the second quarter where he scored 12 of 14, and then the other 2 were an assist from him to Lively. But the headline for me of this game is that this is why GMs will always take guys on like this that have lived in this neighborhood. Because, I mean, you and I have had plenty to say about all of these players. But Paul George having 7 points in game 3, and then he has 26 in the first half. You're like, yeah, this is why everybody would still sign Paul George this summer. This is why Dallas, granted it was a little different for the Kyrie market, but this is why there'd still be a trade partner. And this is why the Clippers are like, hey, you guys have questions about adding Harden? We'll take him, even though it wasn't like some haul that Philly got for him. I think it was just a lesson, a reminder, and especially for me, that this is why GMs will be like, yeah, in.
There's a flip side of that where there's 10 trades where it goes the other way, right? That we don't ever talk about again. Like when Orlando's like, yeah, maybe we can resurrect Gilbert Arenas. Maybe that'll happen.
I don't know that Arenas is these guys though. Maybe.
No, I know. I'm just a lot of times this doesn't work out, but it was crazy to watch Kyrie and Harden just playing at the highest possible offensive level in the second half. The Mavs had just no answers for Harden at all. Although I guess one of the answers might have been maybe put in one of your shot blockers and put them near the rim so they can challenge some of the shots. It was just the same floater over and over and over again. Why not try to put somebody else in?
Hey, I'm so glad you said it because this Mavs resurgence has been about the size option. Yeah. And Kleba was the one that was in as the 5-man.
It was almost like they wanted him for the spacing on offense, but were willing to throw away the defensive part. That Dallas started doing something I always wonder, Harden over and over was trying to get Luka in a switch. And then at one point there with like 4 minutes left, PJ Washington would run over and do the quick swap with Luka to get back on him. That usually works. Teams never do that. They're always afraid to like leave somebody open for 2 seconds to have the guy run out. It's like, oh, you got the switch you want, but watch this. We're going to send a guy flying out to switch our guy back. And then Harden was still torching it. It didn't matter.
I think with Harden, you can get away with it because Harden's not going to go into anything quickly.
Right.
Because I've seen other teams. Right. Like every now and then when a team will try to do it, be like, oh, we got into a bad switch. Let's just get back to it. Then it's just get torched. So I think that's why we don't see it happen a lot. But Harden was, I'll admit, like there was a moment where Harden had a drive and it looked like he had a layup on the left side and he threw it to Westbrook for a 3 and he bricks it. And I'm like, wait, like what is that? Like, is this going to happen again here down the stretch? And it didn't. He was phenomenal. And even though Paul George's third quarter, I was like, wait, is this going to happen again? He hits that 3 in the corner, and he wasn't great in the second half. But it's just this elite level of shot making. Like I feel bad for Kyrie that layup. There is a still shot that will exist, but it's not going to exist in history anymore. When he hits that layup to go up 105, 104, where there's
the 10-tuple clutch layup that he made.
There was 3 guys all with their arms up, and he if you took a screen grab of it before he gets a shot off, you're just going, no way. And again, that's why he's the best small finisher in the history of the game. So I don't know what does it mean though? What does it mean to you right now?
Well, Kyrie makes that shot. The crowd's ballistic. I mean, that's a top 5 crowd. I was at all those 2011 finals games when it was Dallas, Miami, and the crowd should have gotten a ring. The crowd was like that good and that impactful. And when the crowd gets like that, It's super loud. It's really intense, and you really feel it. And it felt like the Clippers were feeling it. And Harden was the one who calmed them down, who is one of the worst playoff performers of any great player, of any of the top 50 guys. He has one of the worst playoff resumes, right? And this was one of his best playoff games ever. Kyrie, we know he has it in him. We haven't seen it as much in the last few years, but we know he has it in him. Paul George is like a cat. He'll jump on your lap every once in a while. He's super lovable. Other times you're like, where's Paul George? Oh, he's in the garage. He was kind of all of those things in the same game today. But that shot he hit in the corner coming after the Kyrie thing, JJ, I thought JJ and Doris and Breen were good today. I was really glad JJ went back to it. Like, hey, I just got to go back to that shot Paul George made because Derrick Jones Jr. was perfect defensively, did every single thing right, and the guy had to make a 25-footer over the backboard. But he misses that. I think Dallas wins. I think that would have been it. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that Luka was the fourth best guy in this game, which I didn't think he looked right the whole game. And he hurt his knee. He did something. He just looked gimpy. And there was multiple moments in this game where it seemed like he was going to go on a Luka run when they had momentum, and then he would just miss a shot. The one time he hit a three, he tied one in the fourth quarter. It was like, oh, with 5 minutes left. It was like, oh, there he is. This is what he's, this is why he's one of the three best players in the league. But I thought for the most part, at one point I looked up, he was like 7 for 21, 7 for 22. But I just didn't think he was, I know he finished with a 29, 10, and 10, but I don't think he was nearly as impactful as the other three guys. Do you?
No, and with him, like whenever he's a little gimpy, there's no secret to it. It's very demonstrative. There's times with him in games where I'll go, uh-oh, what's going on with him? And then over the course of the few years, you just kind of realize like that's part of it, that he's struggling and he was adjusting the brace, he was grimacing, and you're watching it all. And I don't know if it was because it was that, or, some of these Terrence Mann numbers against him are incredible. Like, I couldn't believe it when they showed that graphic, and I don't have the final tally from all of it, but the numbers against Mann, just shocking. Like I never think anybody can do that to Luka, and I wouldn't think it would be
I saw that
Mann.
in person game one. I was like, man, I don't think anybody guards Luka great, but he's pretty comfortable guarding Luka. About as comfortable as you're going to be, right? It's not like anybody's like, oh, awesome, I get to guard Luka. But
there's some randomness in the field goal attempts and made and everything, but like Mann's up for it. And so, there was also a possession there late but I've seen this in the regular season with Luka when Kyrie's going, where Luka's like, hey, go do your thing. And the funny thing is they had a possession where they actually doubled Kyrie off of Luka and then went back to Luka with single coverage. And because they were so worried about Kyrie in that moment. I think, I never get like really worked up like, oh, you should have done this. Like, could Josh Green have had a better chance athletically with Harden on some of those drives than PJ Washington? Maybe, maybe Kid doesn't trust Josh Green to be out in the game in that spot. He didn't want to play him at the beginning of the playoffs. And just because it didn't happen doesn't mean it was a solution. But the shot making from Harden down the stretch where I thought they were going to fall apart. I thought the Clippers were going to like, hey, even up 10, I'm like, home crowd, Dallas, way more at stake. No Kawhi. Westbrook's out there for 2 straight games. I don't know what he's telling himself in the mirror before these games. Game 3 was far more egregious than we saw game 4. It's just, there's nothing offensively there for him. But to think of, we got these 2 games back to back today is incredible after the first weekend start.
Did you feel like if the Clippers lost that game, what happened? It's a pretty good what if. What happens to that team? Because you have Kawhi who comes back for 2 and 3. It doesn't look right. Game 3, even playing him seemed like a huge mistake. As we're watching it, we're like, what the hell are they doing? Like, he's not even 60%. Want me to do some percentages?
Maybe saw a 60%.
59%.
I saw 60% thrown out. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, 60 would be awesome right now.
57? Yeah. But it really, and the way Westbrook behaved in that game and just their general demeanor, it felt like this was going south. So they scratched Kawhi today, and I think we all had the same reaction. Like, well, they didn't have him in game 1. They look great. Maybe this is the right move. Then they come out like gangbusters. They look awesome. Then they blow it. And then after Kyrie makes the 10-tuple clutch shot, it just seemed like that's it. Holy shit. This is going to be a wrap. Dallas is going to beat them in 5. And now I don't know what to think with this series because both teams have matchups against the other team that they really like. And if you're at least Dallas, you could go, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't add Kleba down the stretch there. Maybe we should play our bigs. There's probably some other stuff we can do with Harden. Maybe we need to push the ball into the hands of other people. If you're the Clippers, you're going, well, Kyrie was just out of control, but Luka really wasn't that effective. What happens if he gets going? So I think there's more fear of the unknown if you're the Clippers than you're the Mavs. I also don't. Do you think we see Kawhi again in this series?
Who knows? I never know what to expect with him ever. It was right before game 1. It's like, no, he's not going to go. And then there's game 2. But then you're right. I mean, game 3 was so bad. It was funny. Well, it's not funny, but SportsCenter, the Instagram feed or the Twitter feed had Kawhi hanging on the rim because he got that baseline dunk and you were like, okay. But sometimes when you're hurt and you know where you're going and you're going straight line and there's nothing that's unpredictable about your movement, you can kind of mask it a little bit. And so he gets that baseline dunk. And then when they threw him the alley-oop, I was like, should you even do that with him? But it's all instinctive. You're not thinking like, okay, I shouldn't do this. But then he hung on the rim so long. And then the SportsCenter feed was like crying, laughing face emoji, like, look at Kawhi just goofing around. I was like, yeah, that's not what this is.
No, he doesn't want to come down.
He's worried about how he's going to land after the play is dead, not even in traffic. He's just hanging. And then I'm like, okay, well, he must be toast. But I think you brought up a good point. It's that, one of the things we've really liked about this Clippers team beyond the 3 guys is like they spent all this money. They've been smart with the Powell transaction. They've developed Coffee, as I've said a couple times. Like, I just think there's
your guy.
Well, there's worse options for the 5th guy to have the ball in his hands at the end of the shot clock than Amir Coffee. And then the big rotation has worked out here with both of those guys being healthy. So the version we saw Kawhi, right, in game 3 is not worth it. Like, if it's like, why is 4 going to look that much better when they actually have probably more perimeter options than other teams would have if a max guy is down?
Yeah, we've seen this over the course of NBA history where trying to shoehorn the semi-injured superstar into something that might be working better without him. And it almost just makes it clumsier for 17 different reasons. But I really like the Paul George matchups in this series for them too. 2-2 feels like the right score for the series. With that said, I would have put the odds of James Harden doing that in a playoff series from what we have seen from him the last couple of years at like 4-1 or 5-1. I thought that guy was gone. And he's not breathtakingly quick like he used to be to the rim. And, it's a little slower. It's a little more herky-jerky-ish, but he was getting to the spots he wanted to get to today. And you're right. Neither of us liked that trade. I hated it. I have a YouTube clip out there that the headline is "The Clippers are dumb" because I thought they were dumb. I thought it was fool's gold. It's the kind of thing you do and you're just spending money and you have no plan. But it's turned out better than I think in my wildest dreams I ever would have thought it would have turned out for them. So you have that piece, but then you also have the piece of, we mentioned the history of the team. All the Clipper fans watching that game as that lead's starting to go down, your mind goes back to that Rockets game. Now that game was in LA. But the Josh Smith, Corey Brewer game, same kind of vibe. Like, they're up 31. The game's done. And then it's like, Mavs. Oh, Kyrie's got, now it's 22. Oh, now it's 20. Oh, now it's under 20 at halftime. Why is the crowd, Breen saying how the crowd's like so loud. He's never heard a crowd louder down 20. And it just felt like the game wasn't over. And I do feel like the DNA of a franchise matters with that. This team has not had a lot of happy memories with games like this. So just to pull that out and win it is atypical of the history of this team. Then you throw in Harden's playoff history. Pretty unusual win, just in general.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for Harden historically is when you look at the elimination games and you feel like you can see it immediately. And that's why that Westbrook kick out bothered me so much when it happened. Because I go, uh-oh, because there was still some time to play in the game. And I'm thinking, is this what's going to happen? Because, post All-Star break, the numbers weren't very good. But from this series on, I mean, he's been incredible. He's over 50% from the floor. He's at 50% from 3. He's getting to the free throw line a little bit more than he was in the second half of the season with the officiating. And he's averaging 26, and they need it. And that's why Ty Lue was telling people, like we told James, hey, you need to be a scorer. And his drives in the middle and those floaters, I think the number was 6 floaters in the fourth quarter.
6 floaters in the fourth quarter that he made. Yeah.
Right. But when he was so deadly with Houston for a bunch of different reasons, that Capella lob, like he just had it down better than anybody in the league. I think Trae Young's probably the best like dribble lob threat there is in the league now today. But Harden, it reminded me a bit of that Capella thing because you're so screwed as the defender. So we're watching Kleba retreat to the baseline to try to just provide some resistance to Zoo. And you're like, all right, so the primary defender is already on his hip. Now he's past him. Who knows what he's going to do? You always still have to worry about the foul shit. And I think as soon as you take a step towards him, the ball's over your head and you're just stuck.
Well, there was a great replay that they had from the camera under the other basket of Kleba in that exact situation that you're laying out, where Harden's coming toward him and he's like, I should go out, but Zubac is right here. And he was just kind of frozen. And that's where I think Kid's going to get killed on wherever the Mavs fan, like the Twitter, Reddit, all that whole universe, but then also whoever the critical media people are. I think Kid's going to get killed for not playing the big guys down the stretch when Harden's just doing the same thing over and over and over again. With all that said, I don't know who wins. So we got Game 5 is until Wednesday. Then Game 6 is Friday. Game 7 is Sunday. So 3 and 5 nights. 3 days for Kawhi. I just don't know how you play Kawhi in Game 5 after they played so well without him in Game 1 and Game 4.
But if he's ready to go for Game 5, you're going to be surprised.
Well, that's the thing. What happens if he comes in and he's like, I'm feeling great? You'd be like, maybe you should take 2 more days. You got to kind of play him, right? He's making $50 million a year. If he wants to play, you can't talk him out of it.
If he wants to play, it's a pretty good shot. Like if normally, like that's the crazy thing about Game 3. If that's how he felt, I don't expect that guy to go, yeah, I'm good. I'm good to go. If anything, we felt like historically, if he's not feeling like himself, it's not going to happen.
Kind of bails, yeah.
Right. All right. But see, you asked a good question, though, that I think we still haven't really answered about Dallas and LA. But is there a long-term concern you have about the loser of this series, or is it the same for both? I mean, does it matter? And then we still haven't even mentioned, which we will get to at some point today, but like the other 3 teams staring down the winner of this. Like it's just so stacked at the top and how awesome these teams are. But like if you're Cuban and you don't get through this series, or if you get eliminated and you've got the Paul George question, you've got the Harden question, like I just wonder if there's an outcome that changes anything about how these 2 teams think of themselves, or if it doesn't really matter.
I think it's worse for Dallas if they can't get through this series because they mortgaged a lot of capital to get to the spot they're in right now, right? I mean, they 27 through 30, either they don't have their first or they have the worst swap. They gave up their first, I think, this year or next year.
24 this year goes to the Porzingis deal. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another pick out of the Gafford deal, or maybe that was the one they did the OKC swap. Yeah. So I think they have 1 first-round pick left for this. They're kind of all in on this team. If you're the Clippers, you can at least blame the Kawhi injury. Although I don't know how many years in a row you can be like, oh man, if Kawhi had just been healthy. It's like
we just weren't healthy this year.
Oh man, it's year 19 of Kawhi just not being totally healthy. So at least you can talk yourself into that. If you're Dallas, you're like, man, what? So the next thing would be like, man, Derek Lively next year, get a full off season with him and Josh Green. Maybe our young guys will step up, or you say, you know what? You all saw Luka. He was banged up and he needs to get in better shape. And there's another level he can go to in the playoffs, which I think we would all agree with, right? There's one last level for Luka. I don't feel like it's like an Embiid situation, which we're going to talk about in the next break, where it's like this might be who Embiid is. Luka, I feel like there's another level for him to get to that he just hasn't gotten to yet.
Yeah, it might not be in numbers, though. It just might be. Like, I don't know how much more dominant can he be offensively.
I mean, yeah, I'm talking more impact than numbers. Like today was a game when you're the best player in the league and Kyrie does everything he did in the second and third quarters, then you're like, okay, thank you, Kyrie. I'll take it from here. And he just didn't. If you're comparing him to Jokic and SGA, those are guys that over and over again down the stretch in games like this just took over the game and finished it. And he just didn't do it in this game today. But he doesn't seem 100% healthy. He kept looking at his knee, kept adjusting his knee. Didn't look great. The Kyrie piece, He's so fucking fun to watch. I know we did this segment like 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Let's do it again. Let's be positive about it. He deserves it.
He's just really fun to watch. I'm just glad whatever he had to figure out in his life to get to this point where he's a really fun, impactful playoff player. I kind of thought the ship had sailed. The last time I remember him playing like this was game 1 of the Celtics-Nets series when he was really good and then kind of blew the game in the last minute and then went sideways the rest of that series. And then we never really saw him again on this stage like that. The guy today was the full package. This is one of the most gifted offensive guards in the history of the league. Just doing it, just performing. And it was awesome.
What I really liked about it too was how much he sensed, okay, they need me now. Like as great as Luka is, and Luka's final stat line is still 29, 10, and 10. It's just, 1-8 from 3. Didn't hit that one until late. And I would agree there was some in-between moments.
Passed up some weird shots. I thought there was a couple of times when he just passed up shots he always takes.
I just always expect him to be able to drive at will whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a defensive thing or if it's a physical thing, but I just always assume, okay, if you really need to here, he's going to find a way to get there, the best angle guy, best driver in the league. But I thought Kyrie's second quarter when he was like, okay, I'm going to go crazy here. I'm going to do everything you can. And he pulls up 3 in transition. I just love teams pushing the ball to see if there's something there before the half court is set. And Kyrie got into some stuff early.
It's a Celtics issue. I like when the Celtics do that. They don't always remember to do it.
I'll never understand why teams don't look for that. Like if I were, granted, I don't know nearly enough to ever even be a high school coach, but I just think like, hey, off of misses, just get the ball up the court, get it out. Always have our guys outlet like to the half court, push the ball. And if it's not there, pull it back out and reset. We got plenty of time to do this. And some of the point guards, some of the real dominant ball people are just, I should say ball dominant people are just so infatuated with controlling everything. Like Rondo would not want any of this to ever happen. He wanted every single defensive rebound immediately into his hands. And look, he was a great point guard. But here's Jokic, the best player in the world. And all he wants to do is get the ball up. Like that should tell everybody everything.
Yeah. All the great passers were like that. FYI, if you were ever a high school coach, well, first of all, I'd vote starting 9th grade JV. But like if you're coaching 9th grade Maricosta, it would be one of the highlights of my year. I would probably go to half the games. Be amazing to see.
I do think you would go to a lot of games. I don't think
I would go. I'd be like, oh my God, Russillo's coaching 9th grade. I got to go down.
Like, all right, see this play
like
here
where shooter.
Clay sets the screen, and then Steph sets the screen for him, and then Clay curls, and the kid's like, my shoes are untied. Like, oh. I interviewed for a job.
My mom's bringing my inhaler. I can't practice for 5 more minutes. You're like, what?
I interviewed for a junior high coaching job in Vermont, and I nailed it. I absolutely nailed the interview. And the guy hit me up and goes, you were going to be my hire. I was so excited about this. He goes, nobody's had the perspective. And I was talking about like life lessons, man. I wasn't even talking about X's and O's. He's like, with the teachers union, like the social studies guy was like, I'll coach it. He's like, so I have to give it to him. So who knows? Who knows? I might not even be doing this pod right now.
Someday. Maybe the 2 of us together.
I was thinking about this when, like, if you're
so
Cuban. No, I don't know that we could do that. You'd be like, oh, who's the defensive coordinator? Like, I don't know. Like when I was thinking about Cuban today, when he was miserable right on the baseline, and going like to the point we were just talking about, like they really went all in, and we still don't even know if they're better than the 3 other teams in the West. So even if they get through this series, which I still think is more likely with the Kawhi part of it, what does it really mean on the next one if you really like the matchup? But I mean, I have moments where I watch OKC. I'm like, what if OKC is just better than everybody? Like I'm at that point, right?
Yeah.